We have to remember that there is so much visual material that does not exist on Pinterest.
Yeah.
There is so much. And so for me, it's going to the consignment shop and buying up old coffee table books. So
Yeah.
I bought a coffee table book that's like menu design in Europe from 1800s to 1950. And I'm working on a steakhouse project right now. I'm like, well, this will be relevant. But looking at it physically, like the tactile, like, granted, they're like scans and pictures of menus. They're not the actual menu. But to your point, like you have to have that spark of something, because if I look at what all of my competitors are also looking at for inspo, no wonder all of our stuff is going to look the same. Like,
No
I think
kidding.
about that so much of creativity. I'm a huge foodie and like I love to cook. And it's to your point what you were saying of like if I get too stuck in one medium, I lose my curiosity. It's like if you only cook one cuisine with one set of spices and one set of ingredients, like yeah, no, there's only so many ways you can do like tomatoes, olive oil, garlic, and basil. Kiss my aesthetic. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. We're so excited to have illustrator Meg on the podcast today. Welcome, Meg.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Illustrator and artist, I should say, right? So for anyone who doesn't follow you or doesn't know you yet, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Sure, yeah. So Meg Wagler is my art name. There's no alias, so I guess I didn't make it into that crowd. But I got my career start in graphic design and illustration, and so I've always held that component in my work. And whenever I finally branched out onto my own, I took that illustration as my primary focus, and then from there started building into like a fine art component. So definitely in that visual artist territory, lots of murals, lots of concept illustration, lots of brand illustration. And I kind of most often, I think, refer to myself as a visual storyteller because I think that maybe is a better, like more all-encompassing,
Synopsis.
a nice succinct way of saying that I like to explore visually.
How long have you been doing this visual storytelling? And is this something you knew you always wanted to do? Were you the kid with the sketchbook and 100 crayons and all of that growing up? Or is it something you found kind of later on?
It's a little bit of both, I guess. I definitely was a kid with a sketchbook, but I was kind of shy about it, so I was not like I didn't whip it out at school, and was drawing in front of my friends to be cool. It was kind of a personal thing for me whenever I was younger, and so I would draw in my diary or whatever. And then as I got older, I think I sort of had like a coming into like being an artist or what that meant like in college age and kind of how I wanted to frame that, and I spent a lot of time thinking about how I wanted to land in that space. So I was an art history minor and I was a design major, but I also threw in illustration as the second major, definitely the overambitious kind of side of things. And I think in my third chapter of career now, it's more of untangling some of that. So it's more exploratory at this stage, I think.
The great irony of me having an audio medium podcast and then talking to artists is not lost on me. So, for people who have not seen your work, it is beautiful. It is definitely something that would catch my eye, and it did catch my eye as soon as I saw it on social media. But how do you describe your aesthetic? Like, how do you describe your color palettes and your forms and your style? Who are your artist inspirations to kind of lay the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest word to describe it would be vibrant. All of my color palettes are highly saturated and just very energetic. It's also paired with really kind of like that whimsical style you get from hand illustrations. So my goal is always to like find some hybrid environment of like really intense color, but it's really soft lines or, something like that. Or maybe it's really bright color, but it's offset with like white or black or something like that. I think I definitely leaned into illustration out of inspiration in sort of Eastern or kind of Eastern European illustration world. So it's less
Yeah.
commercial and more conceptual. So most of my professors were Polish and Bosnian. And you can definitely see that coming through like my training and my work is it's very like kind of thought forward or a little bit more heady. And then over time, that felt pretty heavy to me. And so I really also like pulling out into like natural themes like botanicals and things that just feel like, really easy to me to think about. It's a little bit more life-giving instead of thought-provoking. So
Sure.
I like to find a balance of kind of how that work is coming out. But I think in terms of like style inspirations, Mary Mecco is probably my favorite like fashion designer in terms of
Okay.
like color, like illustration use, the way that they pair with artists. So that's a pretty good visual steer, and just really poppy visual surrealism with pop art.
Yeah.
Like I
Yes.
think that's where I'd be.
Yeah, well, and it translates so beautifully between print and digital. Like I think that that's what I end up drawn to with branding is our tagline is okay, we build brag-worthy brands because we want the kind of brands that people look at and immediately are kind of has this like eye candy quality to it because
Mm,
that does translate so well digitally and then also to print, but in the world that we live in, right? Like having a digital presence is so important. How do you straddle the line between your work existing digitally and existing physically? Like, what's your process and where do you feel like you're more drawn to explore? Do you design with a digital mind or are you always designing with like a physicality, like real materials, real texture?
yeah, this is such an interesting question, and it's really timely because I just spent a lot of time trying to sit with this question with myself when I was at an artist residency last month, and my goal of being there was really to focus in that space of like, what are my drivers, and where do I feel the most curious? Where do I feel the most natural? Because I have built a career where I'm painting murals, which are, very
Yeah.
tactile, very large scale. And that's not where I started. And so there's this push pull of like, well, I'm used to working digitally and kind of like tight, right? So digital compositions are always like tight finger movements, but mural is like broader brushstrokes, literally. And I'm often using, spray paint or cans or something. It's just like a very different physical movement, and you're using very different mediums. And if you would have asked me this question, 2 or 3 years ago, I would say, like, well, I think I was so burnt out on the digital medium that I would have I swung the pendulum so far into analog that I was totally immersed in that space, which I genuinely loved, and it was so needed in my kind of my storyline. And I think over the last year or two, I've really started to understand that both things are really helpful for me, just in very different ways. And so this focus area at the residency was like, okay, I can tell that that's true, but I don't really know like do I have to be intuitive about it, or is there some kind
Sure.
of formula that I can set up? Or if I say, like, what about on like Mondays and Tuesdays I work digital, and like, does that even
You're
exist?
trying
I
to
don't
like
know.
schedule it. Yeah.
Yeah, which by the way doesn't work.
Doesn't
Uh,
work.
but it's very, I think, true for me after a lot of reflection that it is not an either or, it's a both. And what I think I like to do most organically is just toggle. So I might, and it kind of is just a naturally intuitive process for me where it depends on where the idea or like the seed starts from. So if I'm out on a hike or something and I see a really beautiful plant, because I mentioned I've been really into botanicals and gardening recently. So I'm starting to pick up more naturally, like, oh, that's a really different flower. I've never seen that before. So maybe I'll get out my camera if that's all that I have on my phone, or sometimes I'll bring a sketchbook. So if I start with a picture of something, then most often when I get home back to my iPad, I'll transfer that over and I'll use digital work to kind of bring that into the illustration world. But if I start with a sketch, then I typically change that into like a gouache painting. And And then whenever I start with gouache or watercolor or acrylics, then I like to later take that digitally because it can kind of quote unquote work out the imperfections. But then sometimes when I'm over in that space, it looks too perfect and too polished, and
Yep.
I revert back to going, or I never publish that, and I only sell, or bring out the original painting or something. So it really, I think it's kind of just always tooling and toying with different tools, and to get the result that I like, that feels like the most resonant.
I think that's also what really gives artists now like a place in time. Like there's kind of this there's no denying that technology has had an effect on the fine arts, and like my belief is that we should be in conversation with these tools, right? Like you learn how to use a different type of medium. You digital is really just another medium more so than like the antithesis
Right.
to arts. And I think a lot of people that don't study the arts or aren't interested in art, my emphasis in fine arts was new media and video sculpture and social sculpture. And so a lot of what I was interested in when I was in school was setting up scenarios that gave a painterly effect, but were actually digital. So it was a lot of like feedback loops. And if I crank the saturation on a feedback loop and you step in between it, then all of a sudden there's this big, like abstract gestural on a time delay, right? Like into infinity spiral kind
Right.
of like look. And it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden, like, is this painting? Is this mural? Because it's at mural scale. So it's like that interplay between tech and fine arts. What do you find as your own resistance to certain tools? Like, does that exist for you, or is there something that freaks you out about tech? Like, where are, if any, hesitations, or you're like, you know what, everything is fair game?
Yeah, I think I'm aligned with you that to me everything is a tool. So AI is a great like current topic, but the same as using Photoshop as compared to
Yeah,
using Illustrator as compared to using like Procreate or whatever, because everybody seems to, not everybody, a lot of people seem to sort of cult following, like get into some program that's like their preferred way of doing a thing. And I get it. Everybody like has a
totally.
natural zone of comfort. And I think you should absolutely capitalize on that for your productivity. But I think it's, frankly dangerous to stay in that comfort zone. And so if I catch myself feeling stagnant, it's almost always because I'm not exploring anything new or anything
New.
different. And so I have what I call what is so lame, what I call my inspiration bin. And it's
No, I love that. Tell us everything about the inspiration bin.
it's literally just this like wire basket that I throw whatever, like if I find, or if I get like a piece of print mail, or a friend sends me a thank you card and I really like the illustration on the front, or like my kid draws me something and I'm like, oh my god, this is hilarious, but I don't want, like, it's like on a post-it or something, so it's not like frameable, or I'll throw it in there. But it's also like just things that I'll draw or put together, or even like found objects, like whenever I'm going, and so I go through this inspiration bin when I'm feeling stuck, and it almost always works the same way, where it tricks my brain into like, mm,
Curiosity mode.
yeah, like it basically flips a switch where I get out of what that comfort zone is, and it's like, oh, how did they make this, or how did they because we've kind of fallen into this I would say habit of, at this stage of technology, where when we want to go look for inspiration, we're like, Pinterest. How about Society 6 or whatever? And you go and you kind of like browse these curated things that are based on algorithms. And I think that that's brilliant to a degree. But if you're only looking digitally, then you're only going to be filtering it through that lens. And so I think it's really powerful to have something like a corny inspiration bin, where you're like, it's this tactile thing. You can see the way that something's printed, how the ink, like is metallic, or like how somebody draws something differently than you normally would. And you're like, ooh, that's an interesting like pen stroke, or like how they cross
And
hashed or something.
we have to remember that there is so much visual material that does not exist on Pinterest.
Yeah.
There is so much. And so for me, it's going to the consignment shop and buying up old coffee table books. So I
Yeah.
bought a coffee table book that's like menu design in Europe from 1800s to 1950. And I'm working on a steakhouse project right now. I'm like, well, this will be relevant. And but looking at it physically, like the tactile, granted, they're like scans and pictures of menus. They're not the actual menu. But to your point, like you have to have that spark of something because if I look at what all of my competitors are also looking at for inspo, no wonder all of our stuff is going to look the same. Like
No
I think
kidding.
about that so much of creativity. I'm a huge foodie and like I love to cook. And it's to your point what you were saying of like if I get too stuck in one medium, I lose my curiosity. It's like if you only cook one cuisine with one set of spices and one set of ingredients, like yeah, no, there's only so many ways you can do like tomatoes, olive oil, garlic, and basil. Like you're gonna run out of ways to do it. Like there's only so
True.
many combinations. So if you go to that restaurant, like you go step, I'm going to eat North African, I'm going to eat Ethiopian, I'm going to go have Thai food. You're going to expose yourself to even just, okay, it still might be basil and tomatoes and garlic, but what's this other new ingredient that's like circling in here? Oh, lemongrass. Okay, interesting. Oh, coconut oil. Okay, interesting. Right? Like you start to kind of expand your palette. And I think artists, you're nodding along. So I feel like you're feeling the same. It's very similar. So I love that you have your inspiration bin because to me that feels like opening a spice cabinet. Like, okay, what can we work with now, right?
Yeah, it's so true. Such a good point. One of my professors in college gave me a bit of advice that it's really stuck with me, and I give it to everybody now. So it's
Nice.
not mine, but it does mean something to me. She said, in the same vein of what you just said, it's so important to diversify your interests. No matter what your primary interest in life is, you can be uber passionate about painting, or you can be uber passionate about cooking, and you're a chef at a Michelin star restaurant. It is so important to have other interests that are not that you pursue in a not most of the time, it's beneficial for it not to be monetized. Just
Monetized.
right, just truly something you do because you're genuinely interested in it. And so you mentioned cooking. That's a great example. Gardening has been that for me. I also love
Nice.
cooking. And so what I've noticed as I've aged and as I've gotten further along in my career, this bit of advice that she gave me at my college age, of course, like I remember hearing it for the first time and thinking like, wow, wise woman, she really like there's
Yeah.
something there.
Yeah.
And it stuck. But at the time, I was so, how college is, especially when you're double
Totally.
majoring or you're working or
Totally.
whatever, you're like, sure, interest. That sounds nice. But then as I've gotten more ingrained into my life, instead of just kind of waking up and going through the motions, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm really cultivating the spaces that I love and the career that I love and the places that make me feel inspired and creative and generally good. All of those things are tied together to me in a way that is influenced by my creativity. So, like the types of food that we're buying at the grocery store have influenced some of the artwork that we bought because when we cook, we're from a pretty the place that we live currently lacks a lot of cultural diversity. And so this was one of the things that my husband and I talked about for a while was, do we really want to stay here and, raise a family here? And that's, I think that there are a lot of pros and cons no matter where you
Of
decide to
course.
land. But one of the ways that we opted to rectify the decision to stay here was that we are really going to put in the extra effort as parents to make sure that we're presenting different cultures to our children in organic ways that don't just feel like, here's something for you to learn
Like
about.
here's World Heritage Month at school. Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
instead,
Yeah.
we're going to the Indian shop and we're buying a lot of different flavors of curry and different turmeric spice flavor profiles. And you mentioned African cuisine. So like, and every time we make something from a different region, we have the music on in the background. Maybe we're playing, like a foreign film, and it's not like, all right, kids, sit down and we're going to talk about this. It's just there. And we
Yes.
kind of allow it to cultivate some interest. And then it just naturally happened because of course, like it's interesting. Like when you allow yourself to listen to different types of music or taste different things, and it spurs additional creativity and additional interest in the world. And so it influenced what art we were buying or what shoes, like what clothes and
Sure.
fabrics we're getting. All those things I think are tied together. So all circling back to like diversifying those interests, I think is really key. And it plays really well into what tools you're using for art, right? That's how we started this conversation was like,
Totally.
how
Totally.
how do you stay at a creative edge? And I think the answer is just really diversifying what you're doing and trying to stay almost always in novice territory.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things my college professor said, which now is reminding me of everything that you just said, is that like no art is truly original. Everything is a
Mm,
combination of everything you've ever seen or experienced. So it's getting comfortable with that too, right? It's realizing like, okay, on the one hand, I can let myself off the hook. I'm not going to create something that nobody's ever seen before. Like
right.
someone's seen something. But on the flip side, can I put something together that's the combination of all these different touch points and kind of remix it in a new way, right? Like, can I find the way to pull from that meal I ate at the Indian restaurant, plus the music I listened to when I was in Thailand, plus something else, plus something from Western culture, plus, and like, can all of that kind of meld and melt together? And that is the unique fingerprint of it all. But back to your kind of like inspiration bin and then seeking out these opportunities to kind of reignite your own curiosity. You just did an artist residency. And number one, I'm so jealous. And number two, tell us all about it because this like sounds amazing and sounds like right up my alley. But for anybody that doesn't know what that is or what that means, could you please elaborate?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I'll start by saying residencies are really can vary. So there are different
Sure.
links, different themes, different requirements. For this particular residency, it was in Finland, which I had not been to yet at the time. So it was a new place, and it was also in the dead of winter during the coldest
Ooh,
month.
cold.
And
Okay. I changed my mind.
it was, yeah, there were some considerations, for sure. But what I loved about this residency, or one of the things, was that it was thematic, and its theme was silence, awareness, existence, which
Ooh.
means everything and nothing at the same time,
Uh-huh.
So,
Like most fine arts art history talk. Yeah.
yes. So it was what that said to me was, "Come and figure it out." Like, "Come
Yeah.
be here, come, rest with what you need to rest with and do work." And there are some residencies where when you apply, you submit basically like a thesis and you say, "This is what I'm gonna work on while I'm here, and by the time I leave, I'll present to you, like, the final product." And this was not one of those. And so I felt very little pressure to perform. And I think when, not always, but for me, for sure, when you enter your career in the uh, design space, in a sort of commercial platform, everything is performative. Like especially in a digital age where we're grading metrics, we're constantly assessing like how an ad is performing. You're A/B testing. Did this illustration do better? Or this color palette or whatever. And so your brain trains. First of all, certain personality types are typically like gravitating toward these career paths. And then on top of that, your brain is being affirmed every time you have your work kind of judged or graded, that you're performing to meet a certain objective. And I think that is certainly required to an extent. But what I have noticed coming out of that career pathway and into illustration at an independent level is a real almost identity crisis of what am I creating for if I'm not creating for someone else, right? Like what am I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
trying to come up with? And it feels a little I don't not off course is not quite how I describe it, but since I've been out of school for so long, I've been established in a career for more than a decade. It's a little turbulent to re-feel uncertainty again because I had been so, comfortable. I had made it up to the creative director role, which is, like the top of
Sure.
the ladder for most agencies. And to kind of knock myself down a few rungs on purpose was like either the best or or worst thing. And I guess it
Right,
depends on
right,
like
right.
which day you ask me. But I think it's really important to make sure that you spend time dedicated to kind of evaluating your process, I guess, or your
Yeah,
whys. Maybe like Simon
yeah,
Sinek references that
yeah.
in a lot of his content, and that's what this residency was for me. It was like, okay, we're going to use this as reconnecting with my why. Kind of, it was more intrinsic focused. I didn't have any major pressure to perform or to have an end result, and that was extremely enticing to me and well worth going into sub-zero temperatures or whatever,
I mean, did you get some sauna at least? Did you get some
Yeah,
good Finnish sauna? Okay, good.
yeah, so I knew, like, Finnish sauna was a thing, but I did not realize how, like, deeply ingrained sauna is
Culture.
in Finnish culture. Yeah, so there was a sauna on the property of the art residency, and it was magical. I mean, first of all, like, to be able to sauna on a regular basis is not something that's in my current Rolodex of luxuries, but
Yet.
also
Yet.
yet. That's right. But they also it was a traditional sauna, and so they taught us how to, build the fire and smoke it out and make sure that it was a very, like, ritualistic process, and
Right.
it was also in the middle of the forest, and so it felt
Cool.
like a real life Narnia, where it was just like
Yes.
the snow on the trees there would freeze in different ways, like whenever it would fog, and so the icicles were like it just looked like all the trees were fuzzy with snow. It was like magical.
Very
The
cool.
air glittered because of the way that the frost would like freeze,
Yeah.
micro freeze. So it was just really stunning and beautiful visually, but also like the translation of this. There were 2 silent days a week, and so it just really was like time to be and exist.
Do those
And
silent days feel long to you or did they feel short? Like, are you the kind of person that when you remove all the distractions, is your brain still like zzz at a certain frequency? Or
yeah,
could you really quiet down and really slow down to a place where you're like, okay, now I can really let things bubble up that didn't have the chance to break through before?
I think it took me a solid 6 or 7 days before I could get to that point.
Wow.
Because one additional component of this theme was that we didn't have any Wi-Fi, which
Nice.
was really helpful because I think all of us are addicted to some degree, right? Like
Completely.
it's habitual. Like I'm constantly picking my phone up and I have no idea why. I'm just like checking to see if there is a notification, even if there's not. And so detoxifying from that, I think was just like any addiction would be, like even sugar, like giving up sugar for
Yeah.
3 days. You're like twitching,
Yeah. I need a
after
sweet
12
treat.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so removing internet was kind of one component, but also this ability to be in silence. And my brain, I call it, or a friend called it, and I adopted hummingbird energy. So just like where you wake up and you're immediately going. And I think it was really a challenge to quiet that into a place of stillness where I could let things bubble up. But once I got there after about a week, so this was a 30-day program, I remember this particular moment where I was finishing my second book already, and it was just the end of the second week. And I had just done, I'd probably finished like 4 or 5 gouache paintings that day. I finished reading my book. I went on a hike. I did sauna. I had 2 meditation sessions, and it was like 6 p.m. And I didn't feel overworked. I mean, it was amazing to me to witness what we're actually capable of doing when we are at ease. And most of us are never at ease because we're so lost in thought or lost in anticipation for tomorrow's workday, or I have a client meeting, or I have, to do the dishes, or I need to make sure laundry is done, or I need to be working on my art concept for this next exhibition. And so we're perpetually kind of caught in these forward planning, forward motion kind of thoughts, which is helpful, but not always. you know,
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can
yeah,
totally imagine. And I think that this was part of I write a trend prediction at the end of every year for the upcoming year. And
yeah,
one of the things I talked about was kind of like this do not disturb as luxury. Like to be able to go somewhere for 30 days where there is no Wi Fi, like is a huge luxury. You know what I mean? And like that, what an incredible opportunity for you to like really strip everything back and like get down to the core of it of like, what can I do undistracted? What can I do without pressure? Like what a gift that is to be able to create without pressure, create without feeling like something has to perform. And I think that's where so many people burn out is not because they don't like doing their art. They like doing their art. They don't like doing all the other bullshit around the art, sending the emails, making the press kits, sending the media kit, reaching out on social media, posting on social media. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just kind of turns into this whole thing. And I think even as an art student, we didn't even get a sliver of an actual education on the business of the art side. And I think that
100%.
that's why a lot of people ended up in jobs that they don't like, where they're not creative, and the art goes by the wayside because it's just like they didn't learn that there was a whole business. As you've heard me say time and time again on this podcast, what worked in 2024 for social media management is not the same as what's going to cut it in 2025. Platforms are shifting, algorithms are chaotic, and keeping up feels like playing whack-a-mole in the wild, wild west. That's exactly why we made our 2025 social media webinar. This is the deck that we actually sent to our clients. It's 65 slides long. And in the 45-minute webinar, I basically walk you through all the platforms, who owns them, their involvement with the current political administration, what are the pros and cons of each platform, what content performs best, as well as what our team would need for strategy, content creation, and posting and engagement to run the strategy on behalf of your brand. So whether you're a small business owner looking to work with us, or you're also a social media manager or creative just trying to get a better grip of the social media landscape, this is a resource you're going to want to take advantage of. You want to head to our website, mkwcreativeco.com/resources. So mkwcreative.co/resources. This is the 2025 social media webinar. And just for you, I included the one-pager reference guide that we've also sent to our clients to really give you the full menu of options in one big flash sheet. So take advantage of it or hit the link in the show notes to get access to our 2025 social media webinar because it is wild out there and you shouldn't have to figure it out by yourself. Good luck. Enjoy. So like it is that ebb and flow. And I love that you like went from one end of the pendulum. Now you're finding yourself, you're back from the residency. How was like, I've been watching Severance if you can't tell. How was your reintegration into the real world? how,
I keep
how was
calling it.
reintegration? That was Severance. You're like, my innie is still in Finland.
Yeah, I
So
so I
funny.
keep using the term reintegration as well, and someone caught that and made fun of me.
So
It
funny.
does feel like a reintegration, and something you just said triggered this thought in me that I hadn't articulated it until you just mentioned that. But I think one of my main objectives in coming back, even before I got here, was okay, how do I take some of this magic and and fit it into my reality? So it did feel very separate from reality. It felt like a bubble. It felt like I was shut off from the world as I knew it. And since it was temporary, I was okay with that. And I wanted
Yeah.
that. If
Yeah.
it weren't temporary, I would probably freak out to not be connected or to not,
Yes, of
because
course.
again, like addiction, but also family. And, like I
Real
want to,
life. Yeah.
yes, be involved in world happenings and what's going on, because also like professionally, that's a big inspiration for work. But the way that I was able to operate there can't physically fit into my current life. I've got kids, we have bills to pay, we have to make sure that we have a certain amount of income. Like there are very real components to the way that I have to structure my days and my time. And unfortunately, all it, like you mentioned it as a luxury, like that's the luxurious part to me was the time, right? Like it was that space to not have my time demanded by anybody else. Even like the best meat, like my making dinner for my family, like those are things I love to
Sure.
do, but it's
Sure.
still time, right? And so that objective is okay. Where can I bake in some of this magic, and how I can not have all of it, but have the important bits of it that keep me focused, that keep me like in this headspace. And it reminded me what you had just said about a book, Rest is Resistance by Trisha Hersey. I don't know if you've read it. It's something that I've been recommending a lot recently. She writes really brilliantly about that notion that rest inherently isn't a luxury, right? Like this is a
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
something we can all have access to.
Totally. And
However,
it's a Western capitalist, like it's a commodity. Like rest is this commodity
right,
that you have to earn, or that
mm,
you have to like somehow do the work to then earn the rest.
right.
Yeah.
And that's
Great point.
exactly what she addresses is let's deconstruct that. Like you can sure, like yes, you can and should take these moments. So like the residency is a great example. Like if you have this opportunity, there are different versions, micro rest, macro rest. There's another great book called Do Pause. That I would recommend as well that kind of talks about these recharge kind of sessions and whether or not that's a 1 year sabbatical or a 1 month residency or a 1 week trip with your friend or family, or maybe it's a 1 day you take to go on a hike or whatever that means for you. And Trisha does a great job of even scaling that down into more micro moments of like, can you just be sitting on the couch and close your eyes and take 10 deep breaths? How can we continue to come back to reminding ourselves, because it's very easy to lose sight of in our current reality, that we do not
Sure.
need to be productive to be worthy, and we do not need
Yeah.
to be requiring any amount of work to deserve rest, right? So ought it be a balance? Yes, because of these other like realities, right? Like yes, I need to pay my bills, so I can't veg out on the couch for 12 hours and decide not to send my client emails, right? Like there's a level of discipline that is required. But it's about finding what that harmony is for you. So I'm careful to use the word balance because I don't think to me, balance is like a duality, right? But harmony,
Yes.
you can find more of a rhythm with. And I think that's kind of what my reintegration process has been, kind of rocky, to be honest, of like, how do these things fit in? And I keep trying certain bits, like, what if we don't turn the news on in the morning? Like, what would that be like? And that's great for me, but not great for my husband. So then we have to go back to like, okay, oh, now I'm living with another person again. So I need to compromise. So there are definitely components that I can and will take from that experience. A lot of it has to do with kind of releasing like my hyper ambition, right? Like always pushing, pushing, pushing. Like maybe if I just send one more email and it's 11 p.m. You know what I mean? Like those kind of no one is really waiting on me for this, and it's
Well, and
really self-driven.
I don't think anyone has the perfect fix-all answer for how much you're supposed to do anything, right?
Right.
Like my sister is a wedding planner and she is a person that just needs a lot of rest. She needs a lot of sleep. Like a homegirl works like 3 hours a day. And she's like, yeah, I work 3 hours a day. And then I go up to my pool and then I go to bed at 8 p.m. and I sleep until 10. And I'm like, how? And she's doing just fine. But that's just not me. Like I function really great on 7 hours of sleep. And then I love doing this. I love doing the podcast. I love going to meet a friend for lunch. I'm a total extrovert. I love hosting people. Like that to me feels regenerative. And laying in my bed all day would make me not be good at all the other things I like to do. But it is kind of finding that balance. And I think a lot of like the longer you do this, like the more you learn about yourself of like, it's kind of that. I like what you said, balance versus harmony, but I still kind of imagine this like tightrope, right? Of like, you're trying to keep all these like all the plates in the air and it's the circus act. And I think the longer you do it, the easier it gets to walk. Like either that pathway gets a little bit wider or you get a little bit more confident in your steps and you get a little bit more like, okay, this plate, don't care, let it go. Like, but it's still refreshing to hear that creatives across all disciplines, I think of everyone I've talked to on the podcast, people feel similarly where it's like, yeah, I tried this and parts of it were great, but then I have this and parts of that are great. And you just kind of have to find your own secret mishmash.
Yeah. You know what my sister just said to me the other day? You mentioned the plate analogy. She referred to them as balls, and some balls are glass, but some can be rubber. And
I've heard this
so,
story. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's kind of this like reframe of when you have this type of personality, when you are the type of person that is really, it gives you energy to put out energy. Like it's life giving to be extroverted and to be with friends and to for me, I'm always developing possibilities because to me that's the whole point of this thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm always on the development front of like, hey, what if we tried this idea? Or have you guys ever thought about this? And certainly not all of them land. In fact, most of them don't, but I'm always on that train. And so there will be these kind of pockets of time where it all hits at once, sort of feast or famine. And in those moments, I'm often thinking, where could this have been different? Like where could I have held the
Yeah, you kind of do
boundary?
the postmortem and the you do the audit. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so we were talking about that, and she's like, Meg, like, I don't know that you're ever going to not be this way. Like, maybe you should stop trying to think that you need to change and rather just reframe. Sometimes, if when you choose this lifestyle and you don't go to a traditional 9 to 5, like desk job every day, part of the nature of that is the ebb and flow of things, the feast and famine component. And so, like nut storing for squirrels like through the winter or whatever. But that implies that there are these moments that you will have to learn the skill set of being able to drop the right balls, right? So the ones that are rubber that will either bounce back or they're not going to break. And might you lose that opportunity? Like, sure, but it's okay. Like nothing broke. Someone else got that opportunity. You can start to pass it off to a different artist. Like there are ways that you
Sure.
can do this in a healthy way that doesn't feel like you're letting someone down, you're failing, you're not doing good enough, you're not needing to push yourself to 11 p.m., 12 p.m., and then get up at 6 a.m. and do the whole thing over again. Like whenever I start to get into these zones of overworking, I'm lucky that I have enough people in my life that really care about me and can pick up on those nuances of like, hey, you're doing the thing again, and kind of help me pull back. So I just loved that rubber ball analogy too, where it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. I can drop this and it's not the end of the world. I wish that I could do everything, but that's a maturity component of like, like maybe it's not a no, it's not right now. And can we push it down the road? And the answer is sometimes, sometimes no, but sometimes yeah.
Is she your older sister or younger sister? She's very wise.
She's older. So
She's
yes,
older. She
she's
gives you
pretty
that good
wise.
advice.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love it. I have 4 younger sisters, so we're a big group of girls. And man, do we have the same kind of conversations where it's like, "Hey, remember the last time that this went down? Remember how that went? Like, what did we learn? Like,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do different?" Or like your sister said, like, can you just see it for what it is and find a way to work within the means of who you are? And that feels
Yeah,
like a much nicer option.
for
Love
sure.
it. The other favorite question, especially because you're an artist, I have to ask you that I saw on social media was, and this is kind of more of like a little icebreaker, brain teaser at the end. If your life and your practice was a museum, what would they sell in the gift shop?
Ooh,
What would
that
be
is a
little
fun
trinkets
one.
or mementos or little things that would remind you of your exhibition?
Oh gosh, this is gonna feel like like a total tangent, but
Go for it.
I have been almost obsessively interested in studying Jungian philosophy for
Okay.
the like definitely the last couple of years. But I mean, I remember getting my first dream and like interpretation book back in I think I was like 12 or something.
Cool.
So it's always been an interest. I always interpret my dreams, or I'll journal about them or look up kind of symbologies. And I think that ended up being a lineage into my interest in graphic design because obviously, like, you're using symbols visually
Symbols to
to
communicate.
to communicate. And so there's something there. And then over time through my design career, I realized, like, oh, I do still really love the psychological component of this work, but I don't love always doing it commercially. Like, I want to connect with these ideas. So when I was at the residency, I really spent some more time researching and kind of figuring out, okay, well, what is that? Because I know it's something. Like, I know I've always been interested, but how does it tie into what I'm doing? And I ended up leaving with a concept for a new exhibition that I want to develop in for dreamscapes. So I want it to be these really large immersive installations of this character, like exploring these different scenes and scenarios. And so I want there to be a variety of art forms. So I want there to be projections of animations of the character, like moving through things, but I want them to be on canvases that are static. And, like, I want there to be
Yeah.
like immersive
Multimedia.
kind of, yeah, like tactile things. So that's what was in my head when you were asking me that question, is imagining that I'm at the point where I'm able to develop this exhibition. So in that world, there's a lot of really big like really saturated color florals, like, that are like hanging off of the ceiling, and this character that I draw often, that's kind of like, maybe she's on a keychain, I don't know, or
Yeah.
she's
Or an eye mask and a candle. Like, there's
yeah.
sensory things happening, right? Like essential oils and a kind of it. From what you're describing, it sounds like there's things that are plush, there's things that are soft, there's things that are smooth. Like,
Yeah.
everything has a tactile kind of quality
And
to
I
it.
love aromatherapy being added, like, especially
Yeah.
if there are florals. Yeah, so I could see a
Yeah.
whole oil line. Oh my, it could be
Uh-huh.
really a thing. I think we could
Yeah.
make it work.
Okay, so then maybe this is how you end up taking the fine arts, and then, like, you get a little hit of the commercialization at the
Yeah.
end,
I
right? You're like, "Here's my major thesis, and then here's how I would monetize." You
yeah.
stick it in the gift shop at the end. Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, we are out of time. I feel like I could keep talking to you, and I'd love to talk to you again about, like, dreamscapes and the history of dreams and the iconography and symbolism of all that, because that's fascinating to me. But where can everyone find you, follow you, buy some of your art, see some of your art? Please plug yourself.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm under Meg Wagler Illustration website. You can explore some of my illustration work, buy some prints, and originals paintings as well. That's megwagler.com. And I am always around on I just
Social
totally
media? Instagram?
yes.
Website? Blogs?
Yes.
YouTube?
Yeah.
Pinterest?
All of those. Yeah, I guess
I
Pinterest
will
as
You
well.
can find me in your Finnish sauna,
The
and
Finnish,
that's where I will be.
yeah. Yeah, that's probably more accurate. Yeah, you can tell that it's still
Amazing.
shorting out, yes.
The reintegration is just it's buffered a little bit.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming on today, Meg. You guys, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to send it to a friend, a sibling, maybe your older sister. Post it, share it, comment, leave a review. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Thanks so much, Meg.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.